All right, this is the special No Desk series celebrating Poetry Like Bread. We had maybe about, I want to say 60 poets that were a part of the Poetry Like Bread hustle. And we were able to get a couple of them to share poetry of their own, as well as talk about the process of how they made those couplets. And we really hope you enjoy this. This is people from all around the world. Again, this is happening because of Retaplax and the Bowery Poetry's special grant that we received. So we're excited to find poetry in the spaces, especially during this drastic and dire time. It is the one thing, like like bread. It will sustain us. It has sustained us, and we hope you enjoy.
My name is Indran Amithanagam. I will read two poems from the Migrant States. The Migrants Reply. We've been running for so long. We are tired. We want to rest. We don't want to wake up tomorrow and pack our bags. We have gone 10,000 miles. We have boarded a rowboat, tugboat, bus, freight train. We have a cell phone and some bread. Our eyes are dry. Our breath needs washing. What next? You're putting up a wall on your southern flank. What an irony. The country that accepts refugees does not want us. We qualify. We have scars. And our host governments hunted at least some of us. The rest fled in fear. Gangs do not spare even the children. White vans took away our uncles, our cousins. Do you think they've been made into plowshares? Aye, what are you saying? Too easy. Too easy to wear our hearts in these words, in slings, on our faces, furrowed, perplexed. What happened to kindness to strangers? Why do we have to be herded like prisoners held in a holding camp? We are human beings, and like you in safer countries, we have the same obligation to save ourselves and our children. Oh, the children, look at them. Give them food and school and a new set of clothes. Give them a chance. Whether you are red or blue, the eye of the hurricane does not discriminate. We are your tumbling weeds, hurling cars, flooding banks, and we are diggers of the dikes. We can teach you so many languages and visions. You would learn so much, you would never, ever say, lock us up. The avocado season is over. The season of avocados is over. The most beautiful girl in town is about to marry a man across the water. My brother is busy with his manuscript. Time to share ideas in a book has gone to the country without a hat. Accept reality. Don't live anymore in fantasy. You are getting along in years, but have only spoken Creole for 2. You have a great long life ahead. Think, reflect, tell all the new families congratulations, good luck, then write again about your life in Haiti when the avocado was in bloom. Lines about bread. We turn to the Greeks when we don't understand the events of our lives. Why relationships end, for example. Why you'll never again serve me bread. In the midst of this pandemic, there have been all kinds of passings and closures and deaths. And I'm reflecting here about the end of a relationship, the end of a love that nourished me and nourished the writer of these lines for many years, and continues to nourish me, but now in its absence, in the fact that it has gone away and is a memory. And so that's what inspired those 2 lines. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Caroline Rothstein, and here are 2 poems. The Butterfly Effect. At sunset on a Monday, on the first day of the month, the asphalt tributary of a city wrought with still stays vacant in the dampness of the trees. A neon orange traffic sign, once relatively upright like a throne, lays prostrate between a converging set of curbs, another kind of royalty, echoing into the reclaimed dimming sky. They say Mrs. O'Leary's cow started the whole thing, as if embers never touched another barn. High winds, dry air, something about a cow. My mother calls the pandemic a chrysalis, the etchings for a new earth, basking in the confines of this shell. Remember this birth, butterflies bursting open their wings. The uprising stopped traffic on the drive. I saw them break the sign, pull it from the terror of the dirt, liberate the neon to worship its own God. On Yom Kippur, the day we atone for all our sins, we called to prostrate on the ground, surrender to the divine, holy our bodies, blame nothing but our misgivings, admit where we fall short. Now, I'm a vegetarian, but I never blamed the cow. High winds, dry air. I'd like to think by some butterfly effect I had something to do with that spark. But here we are, the fire of a moment, the quiet of the cars, liberation taking its thrones, the kings finally thrown. The people united will never be defeated. The people united will never be defeated. The people united will never be defeated. And so too the sunset, so too the neon orange sign. We knew the direction all along. The butterflies, their whole collective song. This is called The Beautiful. Oh, beautiful. Once we sulked through the snow-capped mountains and forgot how to hold each other's breaths. We stopped above the canyon for spacious skies and reconsidered all the ways we've ever come to love each other's skin. For in our glory, amber, we prostrated our hearts at the edge of night and listened too loudly to the howling of the wind, waves pummeling too closely to our cheeks. We once tasted a siren song of grain, for bruised, purple, there it tucked itself under the desecrating sky and the mountains in all of their majesties, despite our having stumbled in our sulk, we're above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed their grace on thee. It is too loud in the silk-drenched tunnels of infinity for anything beyond our too deep love to echo in the passages of sound. And so here we are, and we crown thy good with siblinghood. We resurrect our trust in the wake of any attempt to shell-shock liberation from its tenderest, holiest throne. From sea to shining sea, we are the martyrs now and always of our identity, of our destiny. And oh, beautiful, now never again will we allow the world to sulk at the sight of our glory and strength. We were born for this moment. We were born for this pinnacle peak. We were born to be the beautiful. We were born for havoc's wreak. Here is my line from my poetry like breadline. And so, from the narrow spaces, we emerge, resist, and bake the unleavened bread. What I was thinking with that line, I'm Jewish, and when I think of bread and when I think of redemption and liberation and the moments we are in this pandemic, in this uprising that has been going on for centuries and millennia for so many people around so many systems of oppression, I couldn't help but think of Passover and the Exodus story and the the fact that we are told the Israelites didn't have time as they left out of slavery in Egypt to bake bread. And so we eat matzah, unleavened bread. And for me, it is a symbol for redemption and for whatever liberation is occurring. We are all bound up in each other's liberation. And so here's this moment in which we find ourselves. Thank you.
My name is Jeffrey Cyphers Wright, and it's so great to be here. I'm going to read two poems. This first poem is called Shavings and Loans. And there's a line in here about tomb sweeping duty that I just wanted to mention something about. It was when the pandemic first began really getting traction. They were worried that people in China would want to go out for their annual tomb sweeping duty and that they would become infected. And I thought that was such a metaphor for the whole. Anyway, shavings and loan. Jump right in. What gives pause is tomb sweeping duty, but duty calls. Scramble the phantoms. What feels like 100% is maybe befuddled by fudge, dithering and diddling, fiddling at the fire sale, lonely as a pangolin on the south lawn. Witness the witless grandstanding, inherit the bagged wind. My spring is trying hard. White buds flex, perplexed, resolve. What dusk begins, dawn will erase. Dear landlord, I rest my case. And I'm going to read one more sonnet here. And this is about drought, in a way, is the motif here. But in a way, it's about hope. And the drought is also another metaphor for the pandemic, in a way. And this one's called Cantata. Drought robs the sycamores, plucking leaves in June. A breeze pushes them into a swarm of withered pages, rasping anxiously across the court. Then stillness. They die back down. Invisible forces carry us along. I am a prisoner of hope, a congress of loneliness, a dry tear. An old motor sputters before purring. Empty boxcars couple with a boom. Copying Ovid's playbook, I hold out for change. Home is made of wings. Thunder clears its throat, but won't sing. The goal in life is joy. Today, sun reigns. Of course, it's not raining in that poem. So when I was invited to participate in this wonderful collaboration and assertion of community, I was reading the instructions about exactly what a ghazal is. And it said, you have to use 2 lines, and the last line has to have the word bread in it. And the first line could also end with the word bread, has to end with the word bread. I thought, oh, the first line could also have bread. And the word bread, the homonyms, B-R-E-D, jumped into my mind. And when that word jumped into my mind, these whole little lines jumped into my mind, just about finished, right? And I thought, oh, that kind of works. So these are the 2 lines. A baker of hungry words, I was bred to offer the table this sweet smelling bread. And I was kind of inspired by the whole idea of this. And I've always, loved the community so much. It's really what it's about in so many ways, is sharing. And I was thinking that when you're given a gift, it actually becomes an obligation in a way to pass it along, just as the idea of bread is something that you make and you share and pass along. And we don't live by bread alone. We live by that sharing, really. And that's why it was so wonderful to be here and to do this and to have a chance to serve in the sense of making bread, sweet talking bread. Thank you very much.
We're so excited for this edition of Poetry Like Bread, Part 2. And our readers today include Guy Boyd, who says, I'm not really a poet. I'm an out-of-work actor who writes each morning and works in his garden to stay sane during this pandemic. Alex Caldiero is a teacher, polyartist, sonosopher, and scholar of humanities and intermedia. He makes things that at times appear as language or pictures or music, and then again as the shape of your own mind. Born in the ancient town of Licodia, Euboea, near Sicily, he immigrated with his family to the United States at age 9. Raised in Manhattan and Brooklyn, New York, he attended Queens College in Flushing, New York. Apprenticed to the sculptor-poet Michael Lakakis and the poet-bard Ignazio Buttati, clandestine student and friend of experimentalist N.H. Pritchard, Caldiero has traveled through Sicily, Sardinia, Turkey, and Greece, collecting proverbs, tales, and folk instruments. He is co-founder of Arba Secula, the Society for the Preservation of the Sicilian Language and Traditions. He is the maker of various publications, including books, films, and visual works. In January 2021, he'll have a 50-year retrospective at the Utah Museum of Contemporary Art. Caldiero is a senior artist in residence at Utah Valley University. Jonathan Wells is our next poet. Jonathan Wells is a poet and prose writer. He's published 2 collections with 4-way books, Train Dance and The Man with Many Pens. His third, Debris, is forthcoming in 2021. His poems have appeared in The New Yorker, Plowshares, Agni, and the Academy of American Poets Poem a Day program, amongst many others. His memoir, The Skinny, is forthcoming from ZE Books in fall 2021. And finally, closing out this reading will be April Yee. April Yee has reported in more than a dozen countries in the fields of politics, energy, and climate change. Her writing has been published in Newsweek and the Boston Globe and won the 2020 Ware Sonnet Prize, judged by poet Glenn Maxwell. She studied history and literature at Harvard College and is writing a narrative about guilt and inheritance. Please buckle up and get ready as we listen to these amazing writers.
I'm Guy Boyd, and I'm from a small town in Southern Illinois where I fled from Brooklyn back in March. And I started writing and gardening. And I submitted, I knew about the bread couplets from my friend Rick Moody, and I submitted day after day, alone in the garden, I shed the gnawing ache of solitarily breaking bread. And that pretty much says being alone here. All alone, I have the garden as my solace and poetry. I'm reading a lot of Joy Harjo has inspired me a great deal. So I'd like to read one called, What Was That? My dad never heard I love you from his dad, and I never heard him say those words to me. I wonder how far back this goes. A long way? More likely it's in fits and starts through time. I mean, they did survive. Their great-great-grandson is now a grandfather himself. I say it to my kids. I don't care if I didn't hear it from the old ones, from him. I say the words, and I mean everything by them I'm able to. But when it isn't heard for generations, this gets hard to say, especially to God, because it's awkward, strange, and truly clumsy. I judge myself, I hear myself. I get distracted by the echo. But to let myself be reassured, all the unsaying of before has brought me to this knowing to say, I love you, God, and be okay with that. I love you, son. I love you, daughter. I love you, grandchild. I love you, Dad. I see that you are here, God. I love you too. And the other one is, it's called Soul. Soul talking to body. Sort of a conversation, I guess. Body is experiencing a lot of pain. The only title I really have is Soul talking to body. Come on, get it together, will you? I know this is a temporary rental, but all that noise, I mean, what the hell? You trying to get rid of me? I'll let you know when it's time for me to move on. You'll know in your pity-pat heart. I can't promise a lot of notice, but I'll do my best. Meanwhile, the aches and pain, you're so loud and insistent. I could hardly meditate. Just calm the fuck down, okay? I mean, the best you can do today will be enough. Just try, okay? I'll see what I can do about ego what's-his-face. Yes, I will talk to him for you. I know he says some awful things to us both, but especially to you. He's got to deal with his boss, and mind is hard to satisfy. So he can really go overboard. I don't want to be critical. Well, he gets scared, but they will shut up eventually, occasionally. Yes, I will. I understand that you don't make all the noise, but you have help. And I know, from heavy metal to grand opera, any hour of the day and night, believe me, yes, I've heard it all too. I'll try to talk to them at the next break, intermission. You get some rest. Easy does it. Let's hope it does. I know you like easy a lot. Shh. Look, I'm not going anywhere today. I'm right here. And thanks for the apartment. There are many nice things here. Yes, I know that you've had a lot on your hands, and I appreciate you. I really do. Just remember what I ask you, okay? And yes, I promise I'll do all I can from this end. Okay. Nap? Okay. Just, I'll be here. Oh, thank you. That's, I think that's about the end of my 7 minutes. I appear in movies and television. You can look me up on the internet if you'd like. Guy Boyd. Thank you.
Meow, said my cat as we sat together in the living room. Meow. It was pronounced in such lucid tones, it was an utterance. Yim, yes, where I the center, yim, what water, yim, my asha, ow, mow, hashalom. If thou will go to the left, then I will go to the right. Genesis 13:19-3. Meow, said my cat as we sat together in the living room. no thing but words divide us. No thing but words unite us. Eating bread and wine is noble. Eating bread and cheese is comical. Eating bread and grapes is sensuous. Eating bread and sauce is colorful. Eating bread and apples is chic. Eating bread and nuts is noisy. Eating bread and oranges is resourceful. Eating bread by itself is most ancient. Let's rename human kindness so that it sounds like a new therapy and we can charge money for it. Flip, 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 flip. A mile, what? Who found up? Flip, 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 flip. Flowers are amazing. Plain and simple, solitary loaf of bread on the table, and we come in after a whole day outdoors, and grandma cuts it just right and still warm, and the olive oil seeps into the soft part, which has a name in the Sicilian language that is proper to it. This inner portion, the crust protects and holds dear, and which we construe as something wonderful because it's good to eat just as it is. When I wrote the ghazal on the bread, it first occurred to me how many bread poems I had. I've been writing about bread all my life. And the ghazal that I wrote is the wise who found true nourishment realized that bread is called bread. And indeed, what it always means to me is that it is bread, is the food that fits the hunger. Thank you.
Yes, okay, good. Well, I'll just say a bit about the couplet from the Hustle that I wrote. I was struck in the 4.5 months since we've been in isolation, how many people who were baking bread who've never baked bread before. So the first time, including in our house, and all kinds of bread were being baked, from challah to whole wheat, and other people who I never thought of as bakers were baking bread. And that's what made me write the couplet I did, and which goes as follows. Hands that had never kneaded dough are now led instead to ovens where dampened loaves rise as bread. And that's and I loved hearing I loved reading the other couplets that came with the poem, and so anyway, moving on. I'll just read a couple of poems from my new collection called Debris, which is coming out next spring. Who knows where we'll all be next spring? I don't know. I don't know if we'll be at AWP. I don't know where we'll be. But anyway, I hear a couple poems from it. This is the first one, called Paramour. Night parachutes down like a black snow mistress. She is that quiet. I part her hair and whisper, "It's Jonathan," as if she didn't know me. She pins my shoulders to the pillow and asks, "What are you asking? Didn't I already forgive you?" Her blouse billows over me. She is supple and strong. Her long finger presses against my lips. This is how I confide in her, and we make our accommodations. I mutter what I haven't allowed myself to imagine, how I'd followed the white heron that flew and flew with the volition of the river. Lover of dark tinsel spaces, sparkling moon fence posts, she leans over my sheathed body, her fragrant lanes bordered with black tulips, her hands like dark ribbons. If I forgive you again, she says, will you believe me this time, or are you only calling for my attention? The second poem I'd like to read is based on a book from the 1930s called The Asiatics by Frederick Prokofiev. It's and the book is a fantasy travelogue that Prokofiev wrote, and he turned out he'd never been to any of the places that he wrote about. They were, and yet they're unbelievably precise and vivid. It's basically, he travels the Silk Route and writes about what he'd seen and the people he met along the way. If you've never read it, it's magic. Anyway, it's also very out of fashion. Anyway, so this is called Breathing into the Book, and I interweave sections from the book with my verses. So I'll just raise my hand when I'm reading from the book, since it's italicized, which obviously you can't see. Breathing into the book, The Asiatics. Standing on the shore of Istanbul, Mr. Suleiman hands me a satchel filled with opium. I inhale the sentence and complete the scene. Goulette heavy in the water, street lamps at dusk along the harbor, the satchel's cloying aroma. He told me I should throw it in the water near the buoy when the boat reaches Trebizond. An Egyptian will retrieve it and take it to the city. I breathe into the book and forget that I am breathing. All of this he'd said 100 times before, but never to an American. He handed me the package and told me, be loyal and brave, my young American. Remember, he said, to always be afraid. I breathe into the alphabet. I breathe into the book and forget that I am reading. The book exhales a breath of pulp. I breathe as if I'm sleeping. I breathe as if I'm hiding in a deep forest, but I know that they still look for me. Thank you.
So I'll talk first about the two lines of the collective ghazal. I've lived away from America for a while now, and just a couplet is very short, but I wanted to contain as much of my home as I could within those lines. So I wanted to touch on history, the environment, leadership in the media. And I also have been baking, or rather have stopped baking because I threw out my sourdough starter. It was a very complicated relationship. So here's the couplet. I showered grains, new and ancient, with water tinged with lead, and watched their yeast be choked by orange mold, film over dreams of bread. I've also been thinking a lot about breathing. And I used to live in the Middle East. One thing that we really liked to do was to go out camping, usually in wadis, which are dry creek beds. And on one of these camping trips, I met an old Emirati farmer. So this is a sestina about the meeting with the farmer. It's called Road Trip. These days, I feel ungrounded, wanting a long road to distance me from air that some might say Allah exhaled for me to breathe and suffocate from dust. The yellow sheets of dust hang heavy, brush the ground. Some mornings I can't breathe. I pack up for the road, a tent, a torch, all of survival's plan. Somewhere I'll find a place with air. An hour's drive through dust. Now I can see all of the palms, the rocks, the ground, massaging asphalt road with hands of sand. I breathe. Behind wire, camels breathe, thin nostrils squeezing air down drain pipe necks, a road to lungs designed for dust. They huddle on the ground. Their shepherd comes. MashaAllah, I say, a nod. Inshallah, he says, their babies breathe. In the shepherd's background, kanduras puff with air, strung up away from dust, their whiteness still eroding, eaten by the road and its exhales. Yallah, his wrinkles also dust. The camels rise and wreathe the fence, the shirts of air now drooping to the ground. Yallah, feet try to ground the road. I suck in dust that breathing turns to air. So also like Jonathan, I have a poem about a book. This book is by a poet born in Vietnam named Nguyen Phan Quay Mai. And it came out this year. It's a novel actually called The Mountains Sing that's been recommended by many people, including Vic Thanh Nguyen and Oprah. So I thought I've got to read this book. And this poem is about how that goes. It's called On Reading, a bestseller about the Vietnamese-American War. I do not complete the book. I say it was the style, the letters not slyly revealing their lush selves, je ne sais quoi. Underneath, it was how my bare skin pricked, reading how my people cowered below bombs delivered by my other people joysticking B-52s over schools. No, the problem was the after, how the narrator crept out after the vibrations, how she saw in the branches our people's flung organs. When certain people are exploded, do their intestines unspool like thread, tangling with local vegetation? Does the pink spleen peek from its nest in an owl's nook? How whole are they? Do they bleed? She does not itemize precisely. If they shook, how many fragrant days a brain stays on a leaf, how many birds it takes to peck through a soft lung. I need photographs and receipts, recordings of organs directing other organs into trees. Actually, the problem, I can now admit, were the noisy gyrations of the eyes reading over my shoulder. Together, we scan letters and lines printed on dead trees slung with organs of my people. Their eyes read me as I read too. She wrote, she picked rice from the rubble. They read, she cooked rice in our family's blood. Thank you, Mahogany, for bringing us all here.
Thank you all so much. Beautiful, 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 generous life, breath, bread making words, all of you.